Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the MJ Innocent podcast. My name is Moonwalker Tanya, and I'm your host. All right, so it is roasting night. This will be part 2 of roasting former FBI agent Jim Clemente. I might have to do a part 3 because I don't have a lot of storage on my phone, but that's okay. It's been a lot of fun roasting him anyway, so let's do it.
These accusers in Michael Jackson's criminal trial, you would 100% agree with me. This guy was innocent. These accusers were absolutely ridiculous. They told so many different stories on so many different occasions.
But none of that is inconsistent with victimization.
They went to lawyers before they went to the police. There were so many problems with their motives.
All right.
So
their mother was with them most
I
of
know,
the time.
I get that.
Their father was with them.
They weren't the ones, right? They weren't the ones that decided to go to a lawyer versus a prosecutor.
And they had made allegations.
I mean, yeah, that is true that the kids didn't go to the authorities, but it is the parents' responsibility to go to the authorities if their child is alleging that they were molested. You don't go to the media. You don't go to a civil lawyer. That's the one thing that you don't seem to get, Jim. And the issue is he is comparing the allegations against Michael to other people, which is something that I hate it when people do that. I absolutely hate that because every case is different. And I'm not sure if Jim really understands what grooming is, even though he claims he's an expert. But,
about each other on other occasions. The kids had accused the father. One kid had accused the mother. This was a family that, in my opinion, based on the information I got and which I used in cross-examining them, were very, very facile and free with allegations of abuse.
I get it, and all I'll say to that is that it's not unusual for a child to lie about the fact that they were victimized. It's not unusual for a child to, in fact, deny when the cops.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean every single victim is like that, though. You know, I didn't deny it when the things in high school happened to me, you know, and I do have some friends in the MJ community who are real survivors of CSA, and they didn't deny it, and I'm not going to say who it is, but one of my friends, I remember he told me years ago that his abuse happened like over 40 years ago, and he still remembers it as if it were yesterday. You know, and believe it or not, I'm even the same way when it comes to when I lost the vision in one of my eyes. Like, I don't remember. I mean, my doctor gave me a possible estimated date, but, you know, it's like I still remember that day, you know. But anyway, I just don't think Jim. I even wonder if he even did research about the Arvizo family, because clearly he hasn't. Because like I said in part 1, you know, the Arvizo family made a lot of false allegations, not only just against Michael, but they also tried to go after a newspaper article writer, J.C. Penney's, and there were a couple of other things. So, like, she even tried to frame the security guard at J.C. Penney's, when really it was her ex-husband, from what I heard, that he was the one who actually abused her, and she tried to point the finger at the security officer at J.C. Penney's. So when you have a habit of lying, and especially when people know that you would make index cards of things to tell your kids of what to say, how do you expect people to take you seriously when you come forward with serious allegations when you've lied about stuff like that in the past?
Come knocking on the door. In fact, everyone, but for one of the victims that testified, 7 out of the 8 victims that testified in the Sandusky case, The cops approached them and asked them, and they said no. They denied it repeatedly, and then eventually they came forward and said it. And there was eventually enough.
But was money a motive? Because, I mean, obviously, I haven't studied the case that Jim is trying to compare Michael's to, but oh my gosh, like, dude, like, the reason why the kids said Michael didn't do anything to them is because he didn't do anything. It was all because of money. This is why I always say that if civil lawsuits weren't an option when it comes to CSA claims, Michael never would have been accused. And to anyone who says, well, that's a lie, Tanya, well, then tell me in the comments one accuser who went after justice. You know, they didn't want money. They went to the police. They didn't go to the media. We'll be waiting forever because it didn't happen.
Weight that they went forward with the prosecution. All I'm saying is, I'm not trying to get you to say that.
Liar.
I wouldn't do that as a person. But what I'm saying is that a lot of what you're talking about as inconsistencies on the part of the victims, wonderful traits on the part of Michael Jackson. He's a great father. There are plenty of great fathers who also do bad things. All I'm saying is the whole field.
And obviously, Michael wasn't perfect. I was actually having a conversation with someone, I want to say maybe about a month or two ago, and they tried to say that Michael was a horrible father. And I said, what did he do that was wrong? And I mean, I should have known what they were going to say. They talked about the time in Berlin when Michael dangled a blanket over the balcony. I mean, we all know that Michael shouldn't have done that. But seriously, name one other thing that he did that made him a bad father.
Field of compliant victimization, the just incredibly insidious behavior that happens with grooming and manipulation of children who are actually victimized, it becomes this sort of whole conspiracy of silence.
But if you are Michael Jackson,
Jim, do you know what the difference is between grooming and being a good person? Because I don't think you do.
and you were signing contracts at 5 years of age, and you were supporting a family at 5 and 6 and 7 years of age. You were rehearsing till 3 in the morning while you were going to grammar school, getting up at 6 and 7. You were working on weekends, and you had no childhood. And you became a tremendous genius, a tremendous success, and you had an opportunity to try and do what you could do for children around the world. He used to visit a hospital on every singing engagement, every entertainment engagement. Wherever he was, he would visit hospitals for disabled children. He built Neverland because he wanted to see inner city kids and children with problems have fun.
Absolutely.
If you do this and you're Michael Jackson, you are all...
Sorry, Tom. Oh, and by the way, Tom Mesereau, happy belated birthday. I'm sorry I didn't post anything for your birthday the other day. But it wasn't, Neverland wasn't just for kids. It was also so that Michael could, I guess, reclaim his childhood in a way. Like he could relive it since he didn't have the opportunity as a child. But also, he even said himself that even when adults come to Neverland, you know, they're like dancing to the music and they're having fun, you know, and so, I mean, it also gives adults like a chance to just be a kid again, and there's nothing wrong with that.
So, a big target for false allegations.
Yes.
And I don't think till that criminal trial Michael ever fully appreciated that people were targeting him for his money, they were targeting him for his fame,
Yes.
because he was visible. He was perceived as wealthy, and he was perceived as sensitive and vulnerable and
Yes.
kind and nice, which
Right,
he was.
but also, I mean, even if Bashir didn't show all of the interactions that he actually videotaped, he did show the interactions between Michael and that child, and it is a very telling set of behaviors when a child, an unrelated.
Jim, you haven't done research. Because that wasn't even Michael's idea. And yeah, Michael should have said something, but it wasn't even Michael's idea for Gavin to hold hands and to lay his head on Michael's shoulder. That was Bashir's idea. And Aphrodite Jones, she confirms it. I'm thinking about reading her book, because she wrote a book about this situation. So, and one thing that a lot of people also don't know is that Bashir was thinking about having, like, one of the kids that Michael would help in the documentary. And so it was a decision between Gavin Arvizo and Dave, who was the burn victim. And from what I understood, I think it was Bashir who picked Gavin Arvizo. Now, this is just a theory on my part, but I wonder if Bashir knew that the Arvizo family has made false allegations against companies and people in the past. And, I mean, and the reason why I think that is because, well, think about it. Bashir testified for the prosecution. He would not cooperate. And I do believe it was a setup. I'm pretty sure Bashir was like, okay, I'm going to trick him into doing this interview, and then, what could I really do to hurt him? Bring in a kid who comes from a family who's, like, known for, like, causing a lot of trouble and trying to take things from celebrities. Because the Arvizo family, they also had issues with Jay Leno, George Lopez, Chris Tucker. I'm trying to think if there was anybody else, but those are the names that come to me right now. And they actually testified against the Arvizos during the trial. So there are celebrities and other companies that are well aware of what they have done. But apparently Jimmy here hasn't looked into it.
Child is that affectionate with an adult who is not related to them.
And
that
what
was Bashir's idea.
Put in his documentary were interviews with Michael Jackson where he said he would slit his wrists before he would hurt a child.
No,
but he
and
would
that's
never
the thing.
do anything improper.
And that actually, and I know exactly what you're saying, except that nobody ever said Michael hurt a child. They said Michael had sex with a child. And
well, anyone know?
Jim, it is very clear to me that if you watched the Ed Bradley interview with Michael, you clearly only watched the very beginning of it because, yes, at the beginning of the interview, Michael said, I would slit my wrist before I would hurt a child. It is true, Michael said that. But later in that same interview, he said, quote, I'm not going to do anything sexual to a child. It's not in my heart. That's not who I am. That's not Michael Jackson. That's somebody else. I'm sorry. End quote. So, if you're going to talk about these cases, you need to look into it. Otherwise, you're going to continue to make an ass out of yourself.
Well, except that those are very specific terms that he used. But the fact is that, I mean, I know you called Wade Robeson as your first witness, and
I did.
And he's now saying that it happened. He's saying it much later in life when he was interviewed about why he flip-flopped, why he now came around and said Michael did this to him. He said that, I mean, he's a father now.
That's
right?
a lie.
He's actually in a position where he sees that he felt like he had to be honest eventually.
Well, I interviewed
That's a lie.
Robson before I decided to call him as a witness. And as you know, when you put on a defense case, which you don't have to do, the defense can simply rely on cross-examination of the prosecution's witnesses if the defense chooses to. But if you're going to put on a defense case, you want to start strong and you want to end strong.
Right.
Yeah. And that's exactly what Tom Mesereau did. And yeah, so I'll have to make this probably as the last point because I don't want to possibly run out of storage. But anyway, yeah, start strong and you end strong. yeah, he started with Wade Robson as the star witness. And then there was Macaulay Culkin, Brett Barnes, George Lopez, Chris Tucker. Actually, yeah, he started with Wade Robson and then he ended with Chris Tucker. So, the only reason Wade flipped his story is because he was rejected for the Michael Jackson 1 show in Vegas. It had nothing to do with the fact that he is a father. And he also tried to write a book before he came forward, which was another red flag on its own, but I'll talk about that in a separate video. Okay, so I'll definitely have to do a part 3, so I hope you enjoyed part 2, and yeah, I will see you in the comments.